Filmmaker Mode. If you've bought a TV recently, there's a good chance that you've seen this picture mode in your TV. And if you've tried it out, you might already have some opinions on how it looks. But what's the truth about Filmmaker Mode? What's good? What's bad? And why are there so many picture modes now? I've got the answers coming right up. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and by popular request, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Filmmaker Mode, as well as some other new picture modes that you may or may not have heard of, like Netflix Adaptive Calibrated Mode and Prime Video Calibrated Mode. And how about we make this more confusing, Elitist Adaptive Expert Calibrated Purist Mode? I may have made that last one up, but I am not about wasting your time, so let's do this. Now, if you've landed on this video, you may also have seen this result pop up in a Google search for what is Filmmaker Mode. It says, and I quote, Filmmaker Mode disables certain post-processing features such as motion smoothing, sharpening, noise reduction, and others, and puts the TV in a mode where the content is displayed as the director intended it without inadvertent changes that may result from the TV's advanced technical capabilities. That is an excerpt from filmmakermode.com, and I think it's very unfortunate that is the synopsis that you get because it is incomplete and frankly, not all that helpful. I suppose Google shares some of the blame, but the larger issue is that the coalition behind Filmmaker Mode put that in their FAQ, which is itself exhausting to look at, and it's just not very consumer friendly, which is ironic because it seems like this FAQ is meant to educate consumers. Now, I'm not pointing this out to bash on anyone. I just want to say that I understand if you're frustrated. That's why I'm making this video, to help you be less frustrated. But I also point out that blur because it has a line in it that we're going to come back to time and again. As the director intended is shorthand for no motion smoothing, or no soap opera effect, no over brightening or otherwise messing with the image's contrast, no over sharpening, and yes to accurate colors and grayscale. It's like a list of do's and don'ts, and it exists because over the years, presumably to make their TVs look better and better, TV manufacturers have created a ton of picture processing features that, even though they might make the picture look better to you and are actually helpful, they're turned on by default and they make the movie that you're watching look nothing like it did in the theater. Or, more to the point, nothing like it does in a pitch black room filled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in fancy gear in which Hollywood folks spend countless hours working really hard to make something beautiful. So Filmmaker Mode was created as a shortcut. A simple setting that you could click on that would make sure that the TV didn't do a bunch of stuff that would make the movies that you watch look completely unlike the way they did in the theater. Now, for those of you a little more technically minded, that means preserving a 24 frame per second cadence and D65 white point, both of which I happen to be fine with. But here's the problem. Filmmaker Mode also specifies the luminance or brightness of the image, both in terms of average picture level or average brightness and peak brightness. And it's that last specification, the brightness stuff, where Filmmaker Mode falls apart for the overwhelming majority of you. I mean, technically it isn't really falling apart. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's just that it fails you and the totally normal life that you live. In order for Filmmaker Mode to truly deliver an image as the director intended, you have to watch the movie in a room that's as dark as a commercial theater. And I probably don't have to tell you that most of us just don't watch TV in an extremely dark room. Not all the time anyway. And that's either because we can't or we don't want to. So, here's the crux of the whole thing. What happens to a lot of folks is they turn on Filmmaker Mode in a totally normally lit living room and it looks dark and lifeless. And maybe you think to yourself, this sucks. Who wants their TV to look like this? And the answer is nobody. Nobody wants their TV to look like that. In order for it to look good, you need to be in the dark and your eyes need to be accustomed to the dark. That's what Filmmaker is for. So isn't there a better way? Yes, there is. And I'm getting to that, but I'm not done talking about the other factors Filmmaker Mode doesn't account for. See, your TV doesn't work like a movie projector. Because of the way a TV's panel refreshes 60 times a second or 120 times a second, it's actually technically hard to get a TV to show you just 24 frames per second. Neither 60 nor 120 is evenly divisible by 24, which means some trickery has to be pulled off in order for that 24 FPS movie to look right on your TV. Unfortunately, there are side effects of this trickery, and one of them is called judder. Judder is most apparent when the camera is slowly panning across a scene and you have a big open background with smaller objects in the foreground. Those smaller objects will appear to stutter in those panning shots, and it can be really annoying. That judder is one of the reasons why motion smoothing was created to begin with. Folks don't tend to like it, so TV manufacturers came up with a way to make it go away. And making it go away used to mean making it look weird, like a soap opera. Hence the term soap opera effect. But motion smoothing has seen a lot of improvements over the years. It can now be adjusted so that it does just enough to remove the judder, but doesn't make the movie look like it's a soap opera. Filmmaker Mode, though, bans any motion smoothing at all. So when you watch in Filmmaker Mode, you are likely to see some judder. For some of you, that's not a big problem, but for others, it's the kiss of death. And if you're in the latter camp, that's just one more reason to think that Filmmaker Mode sucks. The other issue is film grain. Now, in this day and age, when a lot of films are actually shot digitally, film grain is basically digitally inserted into the image, and it can have some desirable properties. And in Filmmaker Mode, that grain will come through, but to a lot of folks, that just looks like noise. And that's because it kind of is noise. Now, outside of Filmmaker Mode, digital noise filters can get rid of that to some extent, but they don't always do a great job and somehow otherwise harm the picture. So Filmmaker Mode says you cannot do digital noise filtering. So those are like the three main problems for most folks. Filmmaker Mode makes the image too dark for their viewing environment. It turns completely off the one thing that can reduce judder and often lets through film grain, which some people perceive as noise or dirtiness to the picture. But you can change Filmmaker Mode and make it look more like what you'd like it to. Because while this picture mode turns stuff off, it rarely, if ever, locks out settings. And I think it's worth adjusting Filmmaker Mode because the color accuracy that comes with it is worth a lot, in my opinion. And all the AI stuff and over sharpening that can actually make an image look worse in some cases, all of that is disabled by default. It's just less clicks for you. In my opinion, the pro hack here is to pick Filmmaker Mode, then turn up the brightness or backlight setting to your desired level, then turn motion smoothing on to custom, that's what it's usually called, but whatever setting lets you make fine adjustments. And then you turn on just enough de-judder and de-blur to calm down the judder, but not make it look like a soap opera. And that really is going to be the best way to watch a movie for the vast majority of you. But wait, there's more hope. I have a Hisense U8N TV here, and one of the interesting things about this TV is that by default, its Filmmaker Mode has the light sensor and automatic brightness settings turned on. And this means that when your room is dark, the image will be brought down to a level closer to what the creators intended. But when your room is bright, it will automatically brighten up the image so it looks good in those conditions. It also changes the color temperature of the whites and the grayscale, which in a perfect world means that the colors will look accurate no matter what the color temperature of the lights in your room are. So if you have daylight LEDs, it will balance to that. If it's much warmer in your room, like you've got sun or these practical lights where there's more red and orange in the light, then the TV will adjust for that too. This should get rid of some of the impression that the image is yellowish, which is actually not a thing. You're just used to seeing blue screen, so when something gets warm, it looks a little off to you. Now, not every TV performs this sort of automated task very well, and that's why I prefer to do things manually, as I suggested earlier. But at least this option is now available. It's more of a hands-off approach and still preserves some of the creator's intent. But there's one more thing that we haven't talked about here, and that is the fact that some of you just don't care about the creator's intent. You care about getting the image that you like. And if that's you, you probably already chose a different picture mode entirely. And that is just fine. There are folks that will tell you that it isn't right. And I suppose if we judge that image against a standard, then it isn't right by that definition. But if what's right to you is that you like the way the picture looks, pick the picture mode that you think looks best. If it wears out your eyes, try a different one, like maybe theater day instead of standard, and see how that goes. The most important thing here is that you try different picture modes, because the one your TV is set to out of the box is probably an eco mode that seriously caps the performance of the TV. If you thought the TV looked amazing at the store, but kind of looks lame at home in comparison, that's probably why. The TV is only allowed to get so bright to conserve energy. So turn off the eco mode and then watch your TV spring to life. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Netflix Adaptive Calibrated Mode and Prime Video Calibrated Mode. Think of these as similar to Filmmaker Mode. The difference is that since Netflix and Amazon control the apps, they can partner with TV makers like Sony to ensure that when you watch content on their apps, your TV automatically goes into these modes. Now, you can disable that and choose whatever picture mode you want, but you may have to do the work to make that change. More and more, you're gonna see TVs going into these modes when you play content on certain apps. The good news for many of you is that by default, the same room sensor and auto brightness / auto color temperature settings will be on by default as they are in Filmmaker Mode. Should, in theory, give you a good experience. But for those of you out there thinking that sounds like blasphemy, don't worry, you can turn off the auto sensor stuff and never have to worry about it again. So that's the deal with Filmmaker Mode, along with these other new picture modes that you'll be seeing popping up on TVs. Some of you are gonna see them on new TVs that you already own. Some of them, you're gonna see them for the first time on your brand new TV. But hopefully now you understand what they are, what they do, why they do what they do, and what you can do about it if you don't care for it. If you found this video helpful, please slap the like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like.